let's go ahead and take a look at the San Antonio region, which geographically, this is a massive region with a final count of 74 teams.
Yeah.
And I would say like half of them have the name San Antonio in their name. But 4 of those teams are currently state ranked. So starting off in the highest classification, 6A, coming in at number 12, it's Cibolo Steele. And man, they have really looked the part already this season with a 4-1 record. Only loss, of course, coming to Lake Travis earlier in this season. And honestly, I'm just going to say it. I think they're just going to run through this district.
Yeah.
You've got Converse Judson, which
It's just
historically has been a really great team, but the past couple of years they've been just kind of down.
Yeah, which is just like there's no hiding this. We love Mark Soto. We're big Mark Soto fans around here, or at least I can say personally. And obviously he's going back to do his coach's alma mater, and they just haven't been the same Judson.
Right. I mean, I saw them, going off on a tangent, I saw them last year against Westlake, and Craven and I were talking about, like, this is just not the same.
No, it's not.
Same Judson team. And the New Braunfels, they're kind of down this year. And then San Marcos too. I really think that typically this is a really strong district, but this year it just seems like Cibolo Steele is probably the clear favorite to come out on top there. And I think this team's just been a clear powerhouse in the San Antonio area the past couple of years now. They just have so much talent on both sides of the ball.
Man, and I think, like, we knew how talented Cibolo Steele was going to be this year. They're massive. I mean,
you've seen them in
huge. Yeah,
right?
I saw them in person last year. You walk down there, and I mean, just the lines are huge. And everything about it. But when they blanked Brennan 52-0 in week 1 of this season, it was like, oh boy.
Well, and that was like a spotlight game too, across the state.
Huge.
Like, people were highlighting that game, like, this is going to be a good game to watch, and then Cibolo Steele just comes out and says, hey, nope, it's not going to be a good game.
But I think too, their win over Midland Legacy, that was the one that did something for me. Obviously, you go down and you lose to Lake Travis, that hurts, but the chances of them seeing Lake Travis again in the playoffs is huge. And guess what happened last year? They lost in the regular season, they came back, and they won in the playoffs. And I would not be surprised if that ends up being the case again. But seeing them go up really against a team in Midland Legacy that's built like them, that's a very strength-on-strength matchup. You've got the huge offensive lines. You've got the huge defensive lines. They're going to pound the ball down your throat. Seeing them go up, and obviously that's a long trip for Legacy, but I mean, they looked great, and I think I would put my money on them seeing Lake Travis again in the playoffs, and very interested to see how that one shakes out.
Right. Well, and I think that region, too, is just a little bit weaker than it usually is, with Westlake being a little down this year and Lake Travis as well. But, yeah, like you said, I mean, the chances of them meeting are very high, and it's hard to beat a good team twice,
Yes.
So I would say that's a 50-50 shot of Cibolo Steele coming out on top.
And I was wrong. I said it backwards. Steele won in the regular season,
and then they lost. That's who they lost to in the playoffs
last
year.
Yes. But they lost on a literal last-second field goal.
Right. It's always a toss-up between those two teams. And, I think they've got a good case to maybe possibly win out that region this year. But they play New Braunfels this week, another district matchup. Should be a fun one. Number 20, San Antonio Reagan. I feel like they've been good the past couple of years, but I kind of feel like this year they kind of came out of nowhere and was like, hey, yeah, we're in the top 25 now. They've started off the season really, really hot with a 5-0 record. Big win over, I know this is punching down a division, but big win over Smithson Valley in week 1. Very, very impressive win there. And Coach Hamilton has been the head coach there for 7 years. And I just feel like year after year, they've just gotten that much better and that much stronger. They're a really balanced team with just talent on both sides of the ball. And they've got a really, really stout offensive line with an impressive 1-2 punch in the backfield with Pryor and Cappuccio. Had to spell that out. And then they've also, on the other side of the ball, they've got depth at the wide receiver position, linebacker position, and then they also have a lot of depth at the wide receiver position as well. So a lot of depth on both sides of the ball, a lot of really, really solid talent. It's a really fun district because it's just a bunch of San Antonio, deep San Antonio schools. But the real test is going to be when they play San Antonio Johnson here next week. This week they have San Antonio Madison, but next week that's probably going to determine the District 28 6A champion.
Yeah, they've got a tough stretch here, because you look at that starting next week. You got Johnson, you've got Churchill, who is no one to
That's not
run
a cakewalk,
over.
no.
You've got Roosevelt coming right after that, and then Brandeis. I mean, every single one of those teams. Where's Brandeis's record? 3-3. But I mean, when you look at the stretch of Johnson, Churchill, and Roosevelt, all of those teams are very much capable of pulling an upset.
Right.
But yes, they've gotten out to a very impressive start. I think we'll know a lot next week after they play Johnson.
Yes, that's going to be the real test there.
But even if they beat Johnson, you cannot trip up in the rest of those games, because that's where they could get got.
Right.
They win this week against Madison, and then they go, if they beat Johnson, great. Churchill and Roosevelt are absolutely going to have something to say about that. Like, you have got to keep your foot on the gas.
Right.
But yeah, next week against Johnson, that's a fun one.
Yeah. Definitely don't want to sleep in that district, because you're going to get got if not. Moving on down to the 4A Division 2. Oh, no, just kidding. Sorry. Smithson Valley.
5A Division 1.
5A Division 1. I did not
they're
Smithson
4-1, obviously, with the loss to San Antonio Reagan, and they've looked really good.
I mean, they were dominant last year. They've been dominant this year. I think they have a lot too returning on both sides of the ball too. What'd you say their record was?
Their record's 4-1. So the only loss was week 1 against
to San Antonio Reagan,
and
right?
It was a 1-point loss.
Right.
But no, I think that they've looked really dominant. The defense has looked pretty good. I think the win. Say what you will about Canyon, New Braunfels Canyon. I thought that was a good dominating win for them. 42-21. I thought that it showed some grit. I think the win over Harker Heights is playing out pretty well too. But Smithson Valley has been another one of those teams that it's like, would that be the team from San Antonio to make
it to AT&T Stadium?
Yeah, and I don't think in 5A Division 1 that's looking likely, but I think that they can absolutely take that region and run with it a little bit.
Right, definitely. Because I mean, eventually you're going to probably run into Aledo, who's just been the powerhouse there at 5A Division 1.
That wouldn't be till the
state, right. But I mean, again, I think they definitely could make some noise too in that region, and possibly make it to AT&T Stadium.
Let me see here. I do want to look that up real fast. So 5A Division 1, you're looking at.
Pull up the rankings.
Let's see. Out of Region 3, boo. Bernie Champion is definitely going to be a test within their own district. When you move over, District 11, you've got maybe Leander Glen's looking okay. Georgetown's looking pretty dominant, so that might be the time when they get got a little bit in Region 3. Georgetown would be one that I would be worried about. Bernie Champion is one to definitely be worried about. And then, honestly, you look at District 10, and I don't think that there's anyone in there that they would struggle with too far. I think Manville's kind of dropped.
Right, and we've talked about them before too, and how they're kind of down a little bit this year.
Yeah, maybe a team like Friendswood or something like that. But I think that they have the chance to go. I think their largest test is going to be in district when they're looking at Bernie Champion. And then after that, it would be playing someone out of District 11. But I don't think anybody in District 11 is as good as they have been in the past.
Right.
So they met Georgetown would be a threat, but Bernie Champion's probably the one that'll be the interesting.
Well, and they met College Station in the state semis last year, or was that the regional finals? They lost to College Station. I do remember that game because it was a really, really close game, because a lot of us did pick them to win the region last year.
Yeah. I can't remember which round that was in.
I think it might have been regional finals. Yeah, I think it definitely was, because a lot of us did pick them to win the region last year. So I think it was regional finals. But anyways, strong contender there. in 5A Division 1. Moving on down to 5A Division 2, number 4 Cuero. And they've also looked the part this year with a 5-0 record with wins over really, really solid teams this year so far. And they've just been so dominant. They were dominant last year in Coach Fickhock's first year, and they're dominant this year as well in his second year at the helm. But I think they're really impressive at the quarterback position, and I'll talk more about him later when we're looking at players to watch. But Mason Notaro has just been the clear leader and first in command here with this offense. But they've got talent all over the field, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And if you remember back to last year, they did fall short to Wimberley in the state semifinals. But I think they're definitely back in the mix here to possibly make it to AT&T Stadium. Do I think they're a lock? Definitely not, because you still have Silsbee.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Wimberley, Pleasant Grove. I mean, it's just a really, really tough division. And I think Silsbee's better than last year. I think Wimberley's better than last year. So, no, it's definitely not a lock, but you can definitely throw Cuero in the mix there.
Yeah, I think that they should be your clear-cut favorite out of District 12. I don't think that there's really any question about that. And then you look at Region 3 as a whole, and I agree. I think Silsbee's probably the toughest test. Think what you will about West Orange Stark out of District 9. That one is, they have their moments. But, yeah, I don't think anybody – well, let me say Madisonville. Madisonville out of District 11, that might throw them some fits if they were to meet up early in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Madisonville has really, really looked the part so far this year, so that's probably my sleeper out of Region 3. But I think if you're looking at Region 3 as a whole, Cuero and Silsbee have got to be your two favorites heading into Region 3. And then – I think that you would say that they're going to be favorites over just about anyone in Region 4.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
definitely. If they were able to get past Silsbee, which that would be a very, very tough test, I think that they would be a favorite over anybody in Region 4. Wimberley does look very good. And, yeah, that's probably it.
It's one of those divisions too where like anything can happen because all of these teams are so similar. They're all very close to each other. There's not really a big gap, not as big gap I would say as like you would say in 6A or 5A Division 1. They're all very close, and anything could really happen. And playoff time will be very exciting. They start district play this week against Giddings. So.
Yeet.
And then to close it all out, 3A Division 2, checking in at number 7 is Poth. They currently hold a 4-1 record, only loss coming from Blanco, which, of course, they were punching up a division, so take that as you will. They've looked really good so far, only allowing 21 points in the last 4 games, and they had to replace a lot, especially in the offensive backfield there. But I don't think this team is as deep as they were last season when they did make it to AT&T Stadium. But I don't really also think they're going to be tested either until they hit the playoffs because their district is they're going to run through their district pretty easily, just like they did last year. But I think the question is going to be definitely depth and experience heading into the playoffs. Well, and if they can keep up.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you look at the teams that they've played, typically – that would be a treacherous schedule. Falls City, back-to-back lined up against Shiner. Both of those teams definitely down from what they have been in the past. So it's one of those things. You take that with a grain of salt of going, yes, they're substantially better than Shiner. But walking off a football field with a win in the past couple of years with the name Shiner on their chest, that's a big win. I think
something, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny because when you take a look at that, honestly, their best win so far has been against Dilley in overtime. The 10-7 win over a Dilley team that has looked really good this season. And that was a very interesting matchup specifically to see. Poth's defense has been good, but did they have the offensive capability to outscore someone?
Right.
And they did, because the defense has looked like a Poth defense this year. They're right back on their BS, and it's been awesome to watch.
They returned a lot, too. They have a lot of experience on the defensive side. But, yeah, the real question there is, like you said, the offensive side of the ball.
And, I mean, you think back to the state championship last year, and it's like, okay, the defense was great all year long. and they can't get anything going offensively. The spark that you've seen and the maturity and the growth that you've seen from the Poth team that we saw was lucky to score 7 in the state championship last year. It's been very encouraging, I would think, to Pirates fans to go, hey, we actually are capable of moving the ball on offense.
Right. So there you go. 5 ranked teams in the San Antonio region. A lot of talent down there as well. So